The Valari Collective's scout ship emerged from Fold space at the edge of the Sol system, its crystalline hull refracting sunlight in dazzling patterns. Commander Zirax felt a familiar thrill as they approached their newest discovery. His species had been doing this for millennia, finding emerging civilizations and guiding them into the galactic community. It was a well-practiced dance of diplomacy, technology exchange, and careful cultural integration. Final approach vectors calculated, announced the navigation officer, her translucent appendages flowing gracefully across the bioelectric interface. Estimated arrival at the third planet in approximately 6 hours. Zirax nodded his approval, the luminescent patches on his neck pulsing with anticipation. Earth would be his 14th first contact mission, but the excitement never diminished. Each new species brought fresh perspectives to the collective, along with their resources, territories, and eventually, obedience. Tela, what's the latest assessment? He called to his research partner. Tela didn't immediately respond. The xenanthropologist was hunched over her workstation, 6 iridescent eyes narrowed in concentration as she analyzed the stream of intercepted human communications. "Something fascinating here," she finally said, gesturing for Zirax to join her. Their technological progression metrics are textbook Class 3 nascent civilization. Primitive satellites, basic space stations, rudimentary planetary defense systems. But their mathematics. She highlighted certain equations embedded in human physics transmissions. These calculations for gravitational wave detection incorporate principles that took our scientists 3,000 years of continuous development to formulate. Yet, according to our scans, humans have only been industrialized for a few centuries. Zirax dismissed her concerns with a casual flick of his upper appendage. Anomalous patterns appear in all emerging species. Some develop certain fields faster than others. The Xerelians mastered biochemistry before basic metallurgy. The Pronax had advanced architecture while still using combustion engines. "This is different," Tela insisted. Their historical broadcasts suggest discontinuities in their developmental timeline, references to dark ages and lost knowledge. "It doesn't fit our standard models. The High Council has authorized first contact under standard uplift protocols," Zirax reminded her. "They've reviewed the same data we have. If Earth represents a minor deviation from typical development patterns, that's an interesting footnote for your research papers, nothing more." Tela reluctantly returned to her station, but her disquiet remained. As the ship accelerated toward Earth, she independently directed a subsidiary scanner to examine the Lagrange points of the Earth-Moon system. A peculiar reading caught her attention, a small object at L5 with an unusual metallic composition. "Orbital debris," she murmured, enhancing the scan. The object was artificial but matched no known human launch profile. More curiously, it showed signs of extreme age, far older than humanity's space programs. Tela flagged the anomaly for further investigation, but decided against bringing it to Zirax's attention immediately. The commander was already in the preparation chamber, being fitted with ceremonial contact regalia, and rehearsing his carefully crafted speech about the generosity of the Valari Collective toward developing species. She watched through the viewscreen as Earth grew larger. A stunning blue marble swirled with white clouds. So many first contacts had proceeded exactly according to protocol. Yet something about this planet nagged at her scientific instincts. The Valari prided themselves on their comprehensive understanding of civilizational development, their careful classification system that had served them for thousands of years. What if, just this once, they had miscalculated? The Geneva Contact Facility gleamed with polished marble and steel, hastily constructed over the past month since the Valari announced their approach. Sunlight streamed through the vast glass dome, designed to accommodate beings significantly taller than humans. Security personnel from a dozen nations maintained a discreet presence along the perimeter, their weapons concealed but accessible. Dr. Elena Kapoor smoothed the lapel of her formal suit and checked her translator earpiece one final time. As Earth's chief negotiator, selected for her background in both anthropology and quantum physics, She carried the weight of humanity's first extraterrestrial diplomatic engagement. "They've cleared atmosphere," her aide whispered. "ETA 3 minutes." Elena nodded, surveying the assembled dignitaries, presidents, prime ministers, and scientific leaders representing Earth's major nations. The atmosphere crackled with tension and excitement. "Remember the briefing," she said quietly to her team. "Let them speak first. Learn their protocols before revealing our full capabilities." The facility's roof retracted with a hydraulic hum, exposing the chamber to open sky. A shadow passed overhead as the Valari shuttle descended, a teardrop-shaped craft that seemed to shimmer between solid and liquid states. When Commander Zirax emerged, even Elena's disciplined composure faltered momentarily. The alien stood nearly 3 meters tall, with a sinuous body covered in what appeared to be living metal. His ceremonial cloak rippled with colors that shouldn't exist in Earth's light spectrum, and the translator indicated his rank was roughly equivalent to an ambassador plenipotentiary. "People of Earth," Zirax began, his words flowing through the translation system. "The Valari Collective welcomes you to the Galactic community. We have observed your development with great interest." A holographic display materialized behind him, showing Earth's technological progression, from the first radio transmissions to current space stations. "As is our custom with nascent technological species, we offer guidance and advancement. Our scientists can accelerate your development by centuries. In exchange, we seek resource rights and cultural integration into our collective of 300 sentient species." The alien's tone carried unmistakable condescension, though Elena doubted he realized it. She noticed Tela, introduced as their xenoanthropologist, studying human reactions with considerably more nuance than her commander. Elena rose from her seat. At barely 160 centimeters, she appeared almost childlike before the towering alien. Yet her voice carried surprising authority. "Commander Zirax, we appreciate the Valari Collective's interest in Earth. However, your classification of our civilization contains a fundamental error." Zirax's bioluminescent patches flashed with what the human behavioral scientists later identified as indignation. "Our assessments are rarely incorrect, Dr. Kapoor. Perhaps you misunderstand." Elena gestured to an aide who wheeled in a sealed glass case. Inside rested a clay tablet covered in cuneiform writing. "This is a Babylonian astronomical record from approximately 3,000 years ago," she explained. "It accurately predicts solar eclipses using mathematical principles your own scientists only formalized in your recent history, according to the cultural information packet you transmitted ahead of your arrival." She nodded to another aide, who activated the chamber's display system. Images appeared of the Antikythera mechanism, Egyptian architectural plans, and Mayan astronomical calendars, all thousands of years old. "Our technological advancement in space may be recent, but our civilization's mathematical and scientific understanding has ancient roots. We have experienced periods of advancement and regression that your classification system apparently doesn't account for." Tela stepped forward, producing a scanning device that hummed as she passed it over the Babylonian tablet. Her multiple eyes widened as she read the results. "Commander, the artifact is authentic. And the equations—" She hesitated. "The mathematical principles encoded in these cuneiform symbols align with Valari gravitational calculus from our third scientific epoch." Zirax's metallic skin rippled with confusion. "Impossible. How could pre-technological humans?" "Perhaps," Elena suggested with diplomatic precision, "we should continue this discussion after you've had an opportunity to visit some of our historical sites and museums. I believe your classification protocols may require adjustment." For the first time in his distinguished career, Commander Zirax found himself utterly without a prepared response. The British Museum's Egyptian wing fell silent as Tela's scanning device hovered over the Rosetta Stone. The alien researcher had abandoned her formal diplomatic demeanor, her 6 eyes independently focusing on different aspects of the ancient artifact. "The translation principles encoded here," she murmured, "represent a breakthrough in linguistic analysis that took Valari scholars 8 centuries to develop." She turned to Dr. Kapoor and Professor Ahmed, the museum's director. Yet humans accomplished this nearly 200 years ago, during what you classify as your Industrial Revolution. Jean-François Champollion was a genius, certainly, Professor Ahmed replied, but he built upon the work of many scholars before him. The human pattern has often been thus, bursts of innovation following lengthy periods of intellectual dormancy. Meanwhile, in the adjoining gallery, Commander Zirax stood transfixed before the Antikythera mechanism, an ancient Greek astronomical calculator retrieved from a shipwreck. His ceremonial cloak had been set aside, replaced by the more practical field equipment of a Valari scientist. The gear ratios, he said to the British Prime Minister who accompanied him, indicate knowledge of planetary movements that aligns perfectly with calculations we developed during our fourth astronomical era. Yet this device predates your species' supposed discovery of heliocentrism by over a millennium. History is rarely linear, Commander, the Prime Minister responded. Knowledge gained can be lost again. Libraries burn. Empires fall. Scholars are persecuted. We build, forget, and rebuild. Across London, junior members of the Valari delegation were dispatched to other museums and archives. Their reports flooded into the central communication hub established in Trafalgar Square. Sanskrit texts containing advanced medical procedures dating back 3,000 years. Chinese seismographs from the 2nd century CE. Astronomical observations from ancient Mesopotamia accurate to within seconds of modern calculations. That evening, the diplomatic quarters assigned to the Valari delegation buzzed with activity. Tella coordinated the influx of data, while Zirax received an encrypted transmission from the Valari High Council. The counselor's holographic form shimmered with agitation. Classification error unacceptable. Our entire diplomatic approach is predicated on accurate developmental metrics. If humans represent a new pattern, the implications extend beyond Earth. The evidence is conclusive, Zirax replied. Human history contradicts our standard models. They've achieved advanced understanding, lost it, then regained it, multiple times. Determine if this is unique to Earth or a pattern we've overlooked elsewhere, the counselor commanded. Priority Alpha classification. Additional research vessels have been dispatched to support your investigation. After the transmission ended, Tella entered Zirax's chamber, her arms filled with data crystals containing scans of texts from civilizations across Earth. Where once she had deferred to his authority, now she spoke as an equal, the excitement of discovery overriding hierarchical protocols. I've identified something remarkable, she announced. I'm calling it the human anomaly. The tendency for advancement to occur in explosive bursts rather than steady progression. Look at this pattern. She activated a holographic display showing human technological development over time. Unlike the smooth upward curve of typical Valari models, the human progression resembled a jagged mountain range. Sharp ascents followed by precipitous declines, only to rise again centuries later. The Roman concrete formula, she explained, pointing to one peak and subsequent valley, was superior to anything humans developed until your 20th century. They lost the technique for over a millennium. A simple case of knowledge hoarding by elites, suggested Zirax. Many primitive societies. No, Tella interrupted, highlighting another section of the display. The Baghdad battery, Egyptian electroplating techniques, Damascus steel, all represent isolated technological peaks that were not integrated into broader development. This isn't knowledge hoarding. It's as if. She hesitated, aware of the heretical nature of her hypothesis. As if what? Prompted Zirax. As if human civilization has been reset multiple times. As if they keep reaching certain technological thresholds, then experiencing catastrophic regression. Zirax's bioluminescent patches pulsed with alarm. That contradicts every developmental model in the collective's archives. Yes, agreed Tella, her voice dropping to a whisper. And there's more. Some of these supposedly mythical accounts, Atlantis, Mu, Hyperborea, contained technological descriptions that shouldn't exist in pre-industrial societies. What if they aren't myths at all? Dawn broke over Göbekli Tepe, Turkey, its ancient stone pillars casting long shadows across the excavation site. The T-shaped monoliths, carved with mysterious animal reliefs, stood in concentric circles, a temple complex that predated agriculture itself. Dr. Kapoor pulled her jacket tighter against the morning chill, watching as Commander Zirax and Tella unloaded equipment from their transport vessel. This site is approximately 12,000 years old, explained Dr. Jasper Wong, the excavation director. When it was first discovered, it upended our understanding of prehistoric human capabilities. Hunter-gatherers weren't supposed to build monumental architecture. Why here? Asked Zirax, surveying the barren landscape. Your other archaeological wonders, pyramids, temples, were built near rivers, fertile valleys. That's part of the mystery, Dr. Wong replied. This area was lush when the monuments were constructed, but more curious is how they were built at all. The pillars weigh up to 20 tons, and we found no evidence of draft animals or wheels at this point in human development. Tella assembled a device that resembled a silver spider web, stretching it over one of the largest monoliths. This quantum resonance scanner can detect atomic-level tool marks and determine how materials were shaped, she explained. Activating the device, the web began to pulse with blue light, spreading over the ancient stones. Suddenly, alarms blared from the aliens' equipment. Zirax rushed to a display panel, his color-shifting skin turning pale with shock. Impossible, he muttered, running the scan again. These pillars were cut with precision that matches modern laser technology. The edges show micropatterns consistent with vibrational cutting tools, not stone hammers. Dr. Kapoor joined him at the display. You're suggesting prehistoric humans had advanced technology. The evidence is conclusive, admitted Zirax. But there's more. The mathematical ratios in the monument's placement align with gravitational wave patterns we only discovered a century ago. Dr. Wong pointed to animal carvings on the stones. We've always wondered about these symbols. They don't match any known prehistoric iconography. Tella's specialized scanner hovered over the carvings, analyzing their precise arrangement. Because they're not decorative, they're notational. Specifically, equations describing quantum entanglement principles. The humans and aliens fell silent, contemplating the implications. Dr. Kapoor finally voiced what everyone was thinking. If humans possessed such advanced knowledge 12,000 years ago, what happened to it? And where did it come from? As the day progressed, the excavation team and Valari researchers pushed deeper into previously unexplored sections of the site. Using ground-penetrating radar enhanced by alien technology, they identified a chamber beneath the central complex that had eluded previous surveys. Something's blocking our standard scanning frequencies, Tella reported, a material with properties similar to our shield technology. By mid-afternoon, archaeologists had carefully removed enough earth to reveal a sealed entrance. Ancient symbols, similar to those on the pillars but more complex, surrounded a circular door made of an unfamiliar black substance. Carbon dating places this door at the same age as the surrounding structure, Dr. Wong announced, his voice trembling with excitement. But the material, it's not stone or any metal known to ancient metallurgy. Zirax passed his sensory appendage over the surface. It's a carbon-titanium composite. We use similar materials in our deep space vessels. Dr. Kapoor's satellite phone rang, interrupting the tense moment. It was her colleague from the underwater excavation near Cuba. The connection was poor, breaking up over the distance. Alina, you need to see this. Found structures, dating back to last ice age. Technology. Actual technology. As the call cut out, Tella successfully decoded the door's symbols. It's a warning, she translated. And a record. It states that the knowledge contained inside is preserved for the next cycle of humanity, after the waters recede and the fires die. A storm gathered on the horizon as the team prepared to open the sealed chamber. Lightning illuminated the ancient stones, casting eerie shadows across symbols that suddenly seemed less mysterious and more ominous, the remnants of a civilization that had anticipated its own demise. In a secure basement beneath the Vatican Library, Dr. Maya Chen arranged ancient artifacts on a long table illuminated by specialized non-damaging lights. The room had been cleared of all but essential personnel: 3 human researchers and 2 Valari scientists. The air hummed with the soft whir of dehumidifiers protecting the fragile items from environmental damage. These artifacts span nearly 7,000 years and originate from civilizations that supposedly never contacted each other, Dr. Chen explained, gesturing to the assembled items. A Sumerian clay tablet sat beside Egyptian papyri, Sanskrit palm leaf manuscripts from India, and stone carvings from Mesoamerica. Yet each contains nearly identical symbolic patterns, she continued. Traditional archaeology dismissed the similarities as coincidental or attributed them to universal human psychological archetypes. Tella moved along the table, her scanning device capturing high-resolution images of each artifact. When did you first suspect they might be something more? During my doctoral research on comparative mythology, Dr. Chen replied. I created an algorithm to identify recurring patterns across ancient texts. The computer found mathematical consistencies that shouldn't exist, the same numerical relationships appearing in cultures separated by oceans and millennia. She activated a holographic display that transformed the ancient markings into 3-dimensional models, complex geometric structures that rotated slowly in the air between them. I thought they were religious iconography, she continued, until last year, when I attended a lecture on quantum field theory and recognized the patterns. Commander Zurak stepped forward, examining the holographic models with growing astonishment. He ran a sensory appendage over the artifacts without touching them, his skin shifting to the deep blue of intense concentration. These are quantum field equations, he confirmed, almost identical to formulations in our scientific archives. We call them the equations of creation. They appear in our oldest texts from over 15,000 years ago. How could prehistoric humans possibly have known them? Asked Father Miki, the Vatican's elderly head archivist. His lined face betrayed both excitement and apprehension at what they were uncovering. Perhaps, the priest continued, carefully removing a leather-bound codex from a sealed conservation container. They weren't prehistoric in the way we've assumed. The faded text was written in Coptic, with illustrations that had once been considered blasphemous. This manuscript was hidden away in the 4th century, declared heretical by early church authorities, Father Miki explained. It describes a civilization of sky towers and flying vessels that angered the gods and was erased from the earth by great waters. Dr. Chen translated portions of the text, correlating them with similar accounts from Babylonian and Hindu sources. All these traditions contain stories of advanced ancient societies destroyed by cataclysms, floods, fire from the sky, darkness that consumed the sun. We dismissed them as allegorical, added Father Miki. Creation myths to explain natural disasters. But what if? A technician burst into the room, interrupting the priest. The Deep Sea team has established video link from the Cuban site. They're requesting immediate consultation. The wall screen activated, showing a live feed from an underwater excavation. Despite the murky water, they could clearly see a diver illuminating what appeared to be a control panel embedded in a stone structure. Symbols matching those on the artifacts before them covered its surface. We've dated the organic material found in the surrounding sediment, reported the expedition leader, her voice crackling through the audio link. Approximately 20,000 years old, long before humans were supposed to have developed anything beyond stone tools. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Tella's voice was barely audible as she processed what they were seeing. If these findings are accurate, then human history as recorded is merely the current iteration of a cycle that has repeated multiple times. Dr. Kapoor's phone chimed with a message from NASA. She read it aloud, her voice steady despite the world-changing implications. Satellite imaging using Velari spectral analysis has identified geometric patterns beneath Antarctica's ice sheet, patterns too regular to be natural formations. Commander Zirax turned to the humans, his earlier condescension completely vanished. We need to assemble a joint expedition immediately. If what we suspect is true, Earth may hold answers to questions the Velari have been asking for millennia. The United Nations Security Council chamber had been transformed into a joint human-Velari research center. The iconic horseshoe-shaped table remained, but the walls were now covered with displays showing evidence of Earth's hidden past. Underwater ruins off Cuba, Japan, and India. Anomalous artifacts recovered from sites around the world. Ancient texts newly interpreted through a technological lens. Professor Hiroshi Takeda, Earth's leading climatologist, stood before the assembled researchers. His usual academic reserve had given way to barely contained excitement as he pointed to a timeline projected at the front of the room. After 3 months of intensive investigation, the evidence has become conclusive, he announced. Earth has experienced at least 5 previous technological civilizations in its history, each reaching significant advancement before being nearly wiped out. The professor highlighted intervals on the timeline, his laser pointer drawing attention to specific periods. Approximately 200,000 years ago, we find the first evidence. Remnants of advanced structures now deeply buried beneath sedimentary layers or submerged beneath oceans. This civilization appears to have achieved global reach, with similar architectural and technological signatures appearing on multiple continents. He advanced the display, showing geological data correlated with archaeological findings. Then, at roughly 30,000 to 40,000 year intervals, we see new civilizations rising from the survivors of previous collapses. Each time, technological development follows a similar pattern. Rapid advancement followed by stability, then catastrophic regression. Commander Zirax, now permanently assigned to the Earth research team, activated a geological overlay that correlated with Professor Takeda's timeline. Each collapse corresponds to a planetary catastrophe, he explained. The earliest appears to coincide with a supervolcano eruption in what you now call Southeast Asia. The second correlates with evidence of an asteroid impact in the Pacific. The third and fourth show patterns consistent with sudden climate shifts. He paused, his skin shifting to a somber gray. The fifth collapse, approximately 12,000 years ago, bears markers we've unfortunately seen before. Radiation signatures and isotope distributions consistent with global warfare using antimatter weapons. Gasps and murmurs spread through the chamber. Dr. Chen rose from her seat, her expression troubled. If these civilizations reached such advanced technological stages, why is there so little physical evidence remaining? Dr. Kapoor activated a simulation on the main display. Time erases more than we realize. Consider that modern human cities, if abandoned today, would be unrecognizable mounds after just 1,000 years without maintenance. After tens of thousands of years, with sea level changes, tectonic activity, erosion, and weathering, almost nothing would remain except the most durable structures. The most remarkable aspect, continued Taylor, who had been analyzing the patterns of knowledge transmission, is how information survived these catastrophes. Each fallen civilization seems to have encoded critical scientific principles into religious texts, architectural monuments, and mathematical systems, preserving key knowledge in forms that could survive even as technological infrastructure was lost. She highlighted examples on various screens: the precise astronomical alignments of Stonehenge, the mathematical constants encoded in the dimensions of the Great Pyramid, the quantum equations hidden in Sanskrit texts. They knew they were facing extinction, she said softly, and they created ways for their descendants to rediscover their knowledge more quickly when civilization rose again. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had risen and fallen repeatedly, each time clawing its way back from near extinction with only fragments of its former knowledge. Dr. Kapoor's phone buzzed with an incoming message. She read it, her expression shifting from concentration to shock. The Antarctic excavation team has broken through to the structure, she announced. It's not what we expected. It's a ship. A spaceship buried under ice for approximately 55,000 years. As video feeds from Antarctica appeared on the main screen, showing unmistakably technological artifacts emerging from the ice, the Valari delegation received an emergency transmission from their homeworld. Tella read it, her multiple eyes widening. The High Council has detected similar archaeological anomalies on 12 other worlds previously classified as pre-technological, she reported. They've mobilized our entire Xenorchaeological Corps for immediate investigation. Commander Zirax voiced the question that hung heavy in the air. What force could have repeatedly reset technological civilizations across multiple worlds? And is another cycle of destruction approaching? The Valari High Council chamber, a vast crystalline dome on their homeworld Valara Prime, had never witnessed such disorder in its 5,000-year history. Representatives from 200 member species crowded the tiered seating, their voices raised in a cacophony of languages as holographic displays showed evidence from Earth and a dozen other reclassified worlds. Our entire expansion philosophy is based on the assumption that technological development follows a single, unbroken trajectory, shouted Councillor Draz, his ceremonial collar flashing with agitation patterns. If multiple civilizations have risen and fallen repeatedly, our historical understanding of the galaxy is fundamentally flawed. At the center of the chamber stood Commander Zirax, now promoted to Chief Xenorchaeologist, alongside Dr. Kapoor, the first human ever to address the High Council. The journey to Valara Prime had taken 3 weeks in the collective's fastest vessel, during which time evidence continued to accumulate across the galaxy. The data from Earth alone would be concerning, Zirax stated, his amplified voice silencing the chamber. But preliminary investigations of 12 additional worlds show identical patterns, civilizations rising to certain technological thresholds, then experiencing catastrophic regression at suspiciously regular intervals. He activated a galactic projection showing the affected worlds as pulsing red markers against the spiral arms of the Milky Way. What's more troubling, he continued, is the non-random distribution of these events. The intervals between catastrophes show mathematical consistency that suggests intelligent causation, finished Dr. Kapoor. Something or someone may be periodically resetting technological civilizations throughout this region of the galaxy. The council erupted again, representatives demanding explanations, proposing defensive measures, or calling for immediate cessation of all archaeological investigations. Order was only restored when Elder Mox, keeper of the Valari ancestral records, rose from his seat at the back of the chamber. So ancient that many believed him merely ceremonial, his unexpected intervention commanded instant respect. There is a fragment in our most ancient texts, the elder said, his voice surprisingly strong for his apparent age. A warning that technological civilizations reaching certain advancements attract attention from beyond. Our ancestors called them the gardeners, entities that prune species that grow too quickly. Stunned silence fell over the chamber. Then a junior counselor nervously asked, "If this is true, why wasn't our civilization pruned?" Elder Mox's expression grew solemn as he activated a personal data crystal. The holographic display showed excavations beneath Valara Prime's oldest city, ruins of technology far more advanced than the collective currently possessed. Who says it wasn't? Our oldest ruins contain technology we cannot replicate even today. I have kept this secret, as did my predecessors, to maintain societal stability. The Valari collective has risen and fallen before, just as humans have. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. Everything the collective believed about their history, their steady, unbroken march of progress, was suddenly called into question. As the implications spread through the chamber, Dr. Kapoor received an urgent transmission from Earth. The Antarctic excavation teams had accessed the ship's data systems and partially translated its logs. Her face paled as she read the report. The Antarctic vessel was not an alien craft as we initially theorized, she announced. It was built by humans from 55,000 years ago. It was a refugee ship, fleeing Earth during an ancient catastrophe. She paused, letting the information sink in before delivering the most crucial detail. Its navigational data points to a specific location in deep space, marked with a warning glyph that translates roughly as, "Do not disturb the Watchers." A holographic star map appeared, highlighting a region of space beyond the Orion Arm. Historical tracking data from multiple civilizations, human, Valari, and several other species, showed that each culture had independently begun detecting signals from this region shortly before their collapse. "We believe we've identified the common factor in these cyclical extinctions," Xerax concluded. Each civilization, upon reaching a certain level of advancement, detected these entities and attempted contact, only to be reset shortly thereafter. A stooped figure from a species known for their advanced computational abilities approached the central platform. "If your hypothesis is correct, then the current situation is unprecedented. Never before have multiple civilizations simultaneously discovered this pattern. Together, we might have a chance to break the cycle." Or, countered a nervous counselor, "we might trigger the next reset on a galactic scale." 6 months after the revelations at the Valari High Council, Luna Base Infinity stood completed on the rim of Shackleton Crater. The gleaming installation represented a miracle of cooperation, designed by human architects, built with Valari materials, and incorporating technology from a dozen collective species. Its location at the Moon's south pole provided both constant solar power and the stable, frigid environment necessary for its primary purpose. Dr. Elena Kapoor, now serving as Earth's ambassador to the Valari Collective, stepped onto the podium in the central chamber. Through the vast transparent dome above, Earth hung in the black sky, a fragile blue marble that had survived catastrophe after catastrophe. "Throughout our turbulent history," she began, addressing the assembled dignitaries from both Earth and 24 alien worlds, "humanity's greatest struggle has been preserving knowledge through catastrophe. Time and again, we've climbed from the ashes of collapsed civilizations, rediscovering what our ancestors knew, often at tremendous cost." She gestured to the installation surrounding them. "The Terran Memory Vault represents our answer to the cycle of forgetting. Built into the lunar bedrock, hardened against every known natural disaster, and designed to remain accessible and comprehensible, even to a post-collapse society." Ambassador Xerax, no longer using his military title, stepped forward to join her. His once rigid posture had softened over months of collaboration with humans, his formerly condescending manner replaced by genuine respect. "The Valari Collective formally recognizes Earth as the first legacy civilization in our records," he announced. "This new classification honors species that have demonstrated extraordinary resilience through multiple rises and falls. We no longer approach your world as mentors, but as students of survival." Together, they activated the Memory Vault's primary systems, a quantum-entangled database storing the sum of human and collective knowledge, with multiple redundancies across the solar system. Unlike conventional archives, the Vault employed specialized technologies designed to remain accessible even to societies that had regressed technologically. "The Vault contains technological blueprints that can be accessed progressively," explained the Setian engineer who had designed its retrieval systems. "Even a society with only Bronze Age technology could understand the initial interfaces, which would guide them toward redeveloping more advanced tools, step by step." But as the ceremony proceeded, an undercurrent of tension remained. The discovery of the Watchers, the mysterious entities that appeared to monitor and possibly reset advanced civilizations, had sparked a fierce debate among the allied species. Dr. Kapoor addressed this directly in the final portion of her speech. "Some have suggested we should halt our technological advancement, hoping to escape notice. Others advocate aggressive exploration, seeking to confront whatever force has reset civilizations in the past. The Memory Vault represents a third path." She activated a holographic display showing a fleet of small, specialized spacecraft under construction in Earth orbit. While the vault preserves our knowledge against catastrophe, the Sentinel network will monitor the region of space identified in the Antarctic ship's warning. These automated probes carry no weapons, no communication systems that could attract attention, only observation equipment and quantum-entangled messengers that can instantly alert our worlds to any activity. Ambassador Xerax concluded the ceremony with a statement that would have been unimaginable when he first arrived at Earth, expecting to find a primitive species in need of guidance. The great error of the Valari Collective was our assumption that development must be linear and continuous. Earth has taught us that adaptation to catastrophe, the ability to fall and rise again, may be the most valuable evolutionary trait in our galaxy. As the attendees filed out to tour the facility, Tella approached Dr. Kapoor privately. "There's something you should know," the Valari researcher said quietly. "Our deep analysis of the ancient vessel's navigation data suggests that the Watchers themselves might be artificial, possibly created by an even earlier civilization, as guardians against some greater threat." "You mean we might be caught in someone else's defensive system?" Dr. Kapoor asked. "Perhaps," Tella replied. "Or perhaps they're not resetting civilizations out of malice, but quarantining them until they're ready for something we can't yet comprehend." In the observation dome, Earth shone brightly against the black void, a world that had faced extinction multiple times yet always found a way forward. Whatever waited beyond the stars, humanity and their new allies would face it together, armed with their greatest weapon, the accumulated wisdom of civilizations that refused to stay fallen. In deep space, at the coordinates from the ancient ship, something ancient and vast stirred from dormancy. Sensors detected unprecedented cooperation between species that were meant to develop in isolation. The cycle of rise and fall, maintained for millions of years, faced its first serious challenge, not from a single defiant civilization, but from an alliance of survivors who had finally recognized the pattern that bound them.